Hello everybody, my name is Christian Deblova. I'm working for the E-Control Gas Department and have the pleasure to give you today a balancing update, which is about redesigning the Austrian gas balancing system. In particular, I will present the stakeholder process which is ahead of us. So the presentation is structured in three parts. I will start with some background and objectives of the conducted consultation, including also a view on the results of the consultation, and then I will turn to the stakeholder process and conclude with organizational aspects related to it. So what has happened so far? As you all certainly know, E-Control initiated in early 2018 a public consultation of a draft concept paper about redesigning the Austrian gas balancing system. And integral elements of these proposed concepts are an integrated and centralized balancing of the transmission and the distribution level, as it is foreseen in Article 41 Natural Gas Act, as objective and duty of E-Control, and the daily balancing with full daily cash out and financial settlement, which is an integral element of reflecting the criticism we received from ESA in the monitoring of implementation of the balancing network code, and of course, and in line with the high-level principles of network regulation, an optimized utilization of infrastructure, in particular optimized use of the existing system line back, while of course safeguarding the security of supply of our market. In total, we received 32 responses of market participants and associations, and to the extent possible, this responses are of course also published on the E-Control websites. We've posted the links to the concept paper and the responses right in this presentation. So let's turn to the main objectives and received responses, which leads us really into detail basically. So on the main objectives, we have, as I said already, the integrated balancing zone, which has been, and the need for that has been also kind of questioned by some consultation participants, in particular system operators. On the other hand, we received also broad support of network users related to this change. For the daily balancing, with a centralized balancing and a full daily cash out, there is also particular support of network users, but also a marked criticism of system operators, in particular the storage operators, by referring to impacts on their businesses. Then we have the aspect of within the incentive mechanisms and an optimized use of a system line back, where we have quite substantially diverging views related already to the necessity of VDOs and also to the proposed parameters, so for the way they are designed, and also some concerns of network user related to, let's say, imbalance risks which are associated with the current design. And there is the aspect of frequent information provision, where we have a positive response of the, let's say, group of network users, but also criticism brought forward by network operators. Nonetheless, in this aspect, we have to consider that we are already halfway implementing it, since major changes related to this item, to information provision, have already been enacted with the latest amendment of the Gas Market Model Ordinance. Then we have swift and efficient financial settlement, where the consultation turned out that the currently established process is considered sufficient and positive by network users, and there is no clear need for a more frequent settlement indicated. With regards to neutrality and a neutrality charge, there is a positive response to a daily calculation, which does not mean it has a daily settlement, but also some criticism, in particular from the network operators, which have to be considered in the subsequent stages. And for centralized ex-post clearing, there is also general support, but some concerns related to the applicable price for this ex-post mechanism. And the mechanism for curtailing balance groups in case of major imbalance issues is also generally supported. However, there are some concerns, or let's say questions, related to the methodology, which is applicable for that. And the concluding element is the commercial network balancing, where we received actually little response, but also some concerns of system operators, in particular related to the calorific value methodology and treatment, which we will have to consider in the next stages of working on the balancing concept. And this brings me to the stakeholder process. So in quite a number of responses, there was the statement that a transparent process or a public process would be appreciated. And this is actually really in line with the views of e-control, as such a major discussion and maybe change of the market model requires a broad discussion and in the end also a broad consensus. And therefore, this stakeholder process is initiated. The aim of this presentation is to outline the structure and the scope of the stakeholder process and give you an idea how it will work. In particular, we pay attention to the definition of discussion topics and fields, the essential issues and questions we have to address during this process, and the discussion and working format. So, the stakeholder process starts with the consultation document and the received responses. And based on that, it is structured in a way that we firstly give you an idea, a procedural idea of this process itself, which is this presentation and this balancing update. And after the main holiday period, so to say, in September, we start with the major work stream dealing with the balancing principles, which will then lead to a greater level of detail, which is addressed in the work packages parameters of the balancing model, commercial network balancing, and commercial settlement. And these work packages all together should result in a refined concept for redesigning the Austrian gas balancing system. Now I will turn to these single work packages in a greater level of detail and start with this presentation with the kickoff information, which is, as I said, about outlining the process, presenting the background, the objectives, the major results of the consultation, which I covered already, and also to the major questions and issues to be addressed in the course of the stakeholder process. And of course, it's about clarifying organizational matters. As I said before, so the real start into the stakeholder process will be in early September, when we will start discussing balancing principles, which means defining the real cornerstones of the concept. The objectives are establishing a joint understanding of central terms, mechanism, and effects, so speaking the same language, which does not necessarily mean that we always have the completely identical views. And it's about discussing and clarifying major design questions, which are basically the starting point and prerequisite for subsequent detailed definitions in the work packages to follow. And this all needs to be done against the background of legal requirements provided on the one hand by the Balancing Network Code and on the other hand by the Natural Gas Act. Major topics and issues will be the integrated balancing with full daily cash out, which is one of the major design changes compared to the status quo. Then the real necessity of and the principles for within-day obligations, which have to be clearly assessed, and the concentration of balancing related activities at the clearing entity, which is a role which we introduced in our balancing concept, which was put to consultation. And we will also have to talk about fundamentals of information provision, which are very important for such a balancing model. So the moderation of these workshops and work stream will be done by eControl, and there will also be active involvements and contributions of both the TSOs and AGGM when it comes to the necessity of within-day obligations. This is against the background of the CAM network code, of the Balancing Network Code, in particular Article 26, which requires that the introduction of within-day obligations requires a detailed assessment of the need, and this needs to be done within this framework. And with regards to the format, this will be the same along the other work packages as well. We plan to have workshops with a limited number of participants in order to really to ensure an efficient discussion. So then I will turn to a bit greater level of detail and start with the parameters of the balancing model, where we have the major objectives to refine and specify defined principles through relevant balancing parameters, and to establish also a joint understanding for the framework conditions and the limitations provided for these parameters. In particular, we talk about such parameters when it comes to scope, tolerances, and limits of within-day obligations, if they turn out to be necessary, and the helper-causa mechanism related to the daily cash out. There are also some parameters and deadlines which we have to consider for the information provision theme, which I touched already. With regards to the within-day obligations and the parameters for this mechanism, AGGM will play an important role, as they did already for the preparation of the initial concept published by eControl, which with an analysis which will be refined here and expanded by the support also of the TSOs. Okay, then I will turn to commercial network balancing, so Netzbilanzierung, which deals really with a kind of updated and refined mechanism for the commercial balancing of the network. So for of inputs, offtakes, changes of line packs, changes of OBA levels, etc. And in particular, we also want to discuss and develop an improved concept for the treatment of potential calorific value differences between natural gas and an increasing amount of renewable gases which is injected into the network within the framework of balancing. So this is a notion we addressed already in the last amendment of the Gas Market Model Ordinance, and we announced a kind of broad discussion on this topic, and this will be done within this framework here. So we have the following topics ahead of us. On the one hand, the determination and treatment of calorific value, within balancing, the allocation components of the network balancing, and the invoicing components, including the applicable prices. In this work package, we expect active contributions of AGGM on the one hand when it comes to calorific values and the way they are considered in balancing, and on the other hand of AGCS when it comes to network balancing and the general design questions. The commercial settlement is then the final and concluding work stream within the stakeholder process, and the objective is to refine and specify the processes related to the commercial settlement of the different balancing mechanisms. In particular, we will talk about neutrality principles and the neutrality charge as a result of that, the ex post clearing of distribution level differences, which is reconciliation in network code balancing language, and the invoicing process, so the financial clearing of balancing mechanisms and its results. And here AGCS will be actively involved in these various design questions. So I come to the concluding part of this balancing update, which is the framework for the stakeholder process. The organization of workshops, and we have quite a number of workshops ahead of us, will be done by eControl, and we really will take efforts to communicate them with sufficient lead time in order to give everybody willing the opportunity to participate and to contribute. The number of workshops within every subject will actually depend on the development of discussions and the progress we make. And with regards to progress and efficient discussions, as I said already earlier, we plan to limit the number of participants and to actively involve, on the one hand, the associations, the various associations, so everybody willing to participate will have the chance to participate. And of course, we will also actively involve the system operators and infrastructure operators due to their essential role for the market model. The language will be primarily German. However, English contributions are of course very welcome. And this entire process should be followed in a very transparent way, and therefore the materials to be discussed during the workshop will be published prior to the meetings, and after the meetings there will be short communications published which summarize the discussions and also the major results. The basically end result of this discussion process, so the consolidated results, will be published by means of a refined concept, which we definitely plan to publish again also in English language in order to allow a thorough assessment of also our international market participants. And based on this refined concept, a further market consultation towards kind of reflecting it in market rules is planned. And you certainly have asked yourself already about the timing of this ambitious process. Basically, it is as follows, that we kick off today with introducing the framework and the work streams. And I ask you to note already down the first workshop in the area of balancing principles, which is scheduled for September 13th, 2018 at eControl. And we expect that the one or other workshop in this work stream balancing principles will follow, which will then be scheduled as required. And With the other work streams, we kind of deal in a sequence, meaning that based on balancing principles, we turn to parameters of the balancing model scheduled for October-November 2018, and the network balancing, which is scheduled for December 2018, and conclude with the commercial settlement work stream scheduled for February 2019. And our objective is to come to a refined concept paper until the end of Q2 2019. So we have also included here sufficient flexibility to really react upon the progress and the discussions we have. And we very look forward to your contributions. I also would like to mention that as kind of framework for this process, we have established on the eController website a section specifically dedicated to this Austrian gas balancing redesign process and the stakeholder process we launch, which is accessible at this link published here. And we also introduced a dedicated mailbox where we look forward to receiving your questions, your inputs, and in general look very much forward to the discussion ahead of us. It will be certainly tough, it will be ambitious, it will be maybe demanding, but certainly a good process. And thank you very much for your attention, and looking forward to starting this process officially in September this year. Thank you.